And a very good morning to you. This is The Car Show. I'm Art Gould.
And I'm Dave Kuhn, sitting in for John Retzik.
Yes, and get well soon, John. Now, an event that went on this week, it was the fourth annual Mazda Speed Motorsports preseason event. Part of this annual get-together where Mazda talks about their motorsports activities was the very first screening of a movie called Driven to Race. And we have the producer on the line, Jeff Krueger. Really, it was a very exciting film.
Thanks. Yeah, what you saw was the result of 2 years. A little over 2 years ago, I'd always been an auto racing enthusiast, and my partner, Brian, the director, had always wanted to make a documentary. So we spoke to Mazda about making a documentary about racing. He's very enthusiastic about it. And since I'd followed racing, I've always watched the Star Mazda series. So we wanted to make a documentary about what it takes to become a professional race car driver, because majority of the population don't understand really the details of what it takes. So we spoke to Mazda about following the 2008 Star Mazda series, which is right in the middle of the ladder system. So we went to Sebring for the first race, started videotaping, and we went to every single race they had all through America and Canada. We went to a number of other events, karting events, and spent the entire 2008 year videotaping. We had over 150 hours of footage, and then we spent 2009 pretty much putting it together, formulating a story, getting more footage, and what you saw last night was, or Wednesday night rather, was the result.
And let me just mention one thing, since you mentioned the ladder system, and I want to fill people in on that. We mentioned how enthusiastic Mazda is in supporting their customers, actually, and supplying, first of all, automobiles that are very competitive in lots of classes, and how enthusiastic Mazda is into participating in some series. In fact, some series are all Mazdas, a spec series, and the ladder system that you referred to, Jeff, is really a progression of series where a driver can start out and move up, ending with maybe Formula One or Indy cars, open wheel cars, the very pinnacle of racing. Many of these ladder system races, if you're the champion, you get a free ride the next year. So there's a lot of incentive to be a champion in these, and that is what we really felt from your film, Driven to Race, is not only the pressure, but the enthusiasm and the intensity that these young drivers, in many, many cases, feel because they want to move up the ladder system, and you covered that very well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really more of a tribute to Brian, the director. He's the one who really put this thing together. He had to edit it and come up with a storyline, but that was our goal, to get people to really understand what these guys go through, and girls, to try to reach the top.
Yeah, no question about it. And you brought that up very, very well during this thing. In fact, you mentioned this covers the 2008 season. I think it took a full year, 2009, just to edit this. Is that not true?
Pretty much, yeah. They ran an entire season again before we were done editing it. Did some more videotaping, but it was a very time-consuming process. But we wanted to get that, the point and the feel of what you felt across for, again, what it takes. Because of all professional sports, unfortunately, auto racing is driven a lot around money. You can be the fastest race car driver in the world, but unfortunately you may not ever make it to the top if you're not marketable and you don't have enough money to actually just get in the car for the first time. And
it certainly is just a really big package. Conversely, you have all the connections you want, money, and you don't have the talent. That's not going to work either. But it's a very delicate balance. Yeah, money is fortunately or unfortunately, such a big part of it today. It's backing and sponsorship and things like that have a lot to do with it. Now, Jeff, you're the producer of this. How many movies to your credit so far?
Other than a short film that Brian and I did in 2007, this would be the first.
That's wonderful, and that's the reason I really said that, because not only have we talked about some grassroots racing, but here's a grassroots production that was so slick and so well done. It would stand up with anybody's professional film. When we talk to Brian here in a second, I'll alert him about one thing. Jeff, thank you for sharing your time. Maybe you can pass this on to Brian, have him introduce himself to our listeners as well.
Great. Thanks for having me on, and here's Brian.
Thank you. First of all, Brian, tell us your name and your position in this really great venture.
Great. Brian Spillane. I'm the director of the film, Driven to Race.
Before we get going, I wanted to just mention that listening to us right now, in addition to our really faithful listeners and car-oriented people, no question about it, might be the guy out there, the person that owns a string of theaters across the country, and then you'll have your distribution problem solved. It could be out there.
Well, that would be awesome. That's really what we're focused on next. We hadn't been able to give much thought to it up until recently because we, and especially me, over the last year have been so focused on just finishing this. My time in front of a computer screen has been uncountable, actually, just sorting through footage and trying to construct a story out of it, because with 150 hours we could have gone in many, many different directions, but we wanted to tell a story of the most human interest that also covered all the basis of the racing aspect. So it was a juggling act to hit all those points. Luckily, though, the series provided some really great characters, some exciting racing, and stories that just grabbed us right from the opening race in Sebring.
Brian, I'm the 50% of the room that didn't get to the screening. I was a little geographically challenged that day, but I did see a film a couple of years ago that you may be familiar with that was done on the Le Mans series with Audi called Truth in 24. One of the appealing things of that documentary was that it wasn't just, quote, a racing film. It actually debuted at the AFI Film Fest, and I ran into a colleague I know in the business who was just there as a fan of films, and she and her companion just loved Truth in 24, even though they knew nothing about auto racing. Was that sort of the goal with this, to sort of hook the people who just like a good story, no matter what it's about?
Absolutely, and in no small part due to the fact that I had absolutely no racing background when we started this, which I think probably was an asset, especially since Jeff did. So there was no chance in us missing any key elements because his background is so extensive in racing. But the good part about my lack of experience made me question everything and look at everything fresh, maybe elements of racing that Jeff had taken for granted. So it was all fascinating to me. It was like a kid in a candy store. Well, what about this, and how does that work? And I've never heard about that part of racing. So with that naive enthusiasm, I think we generated a story that's more widespread than two racing insiders alone had made it.
Yeah, no question about it. You mentioned that after 1 year of editing and putting this all together, you ended up last October with about 3 hours plus of a movie, and you weren't ready to go yet because you had to pare it down to about 2 hours, didn't you?
Exactly right. The first 3.5 hours was a brutal enough task. And when we watched that for the first time, thinking, well, we're going to have to cut a bunch out of this. I don't know where, because it's taken us so long to get this. So then you start the next phase, separate from what you went through to get to this point, and in essence, start over again. Now take a fine edge knife and start cutting this down. It has to be a couple hours because the marketplace demands that.
As someone who does that in local television on a weekly basis, it is just one of the toughest things when I've got, I want to say this and I want to say that, and I've got this great footage and that, and I just, okay, that has to go. You have to just really, really start, like I said, focusing and figure out, and then I always say at the end, I started with the whole side, and we just end up with the fillet just to get the basics.
There's so much more that we could do.
Sure.
But the market requires it to meet a certain deadline and a certain size, and that's good. It's good for the market. It's good for the consumer, so that they get a product that they will go and support. Of course, we can make it much longer than it is.
Now, before I let you go, and first of all, congratulations to both of you for getting this thing in just a beautiful position and a real fun film to watch. But in addition to that, is there any contact that our listeners can do computer-wise to keep track of when this may come out? Will it be on DVD someday? Sort of to keep a little link with this project.
We're just starting to build a fan base through Facebook, where we're going to be posting regular updates as this comes to market. And it's Driven to Race, just like the title of the film, at Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, just look us up and become a fan or a member or a friend of the film, and we will be posting info there. We also have a website, which is our company name, Cargo Productions, C-A-R-G-O, productions.com. So www.cargoproductions.com or Facebook, and we'll probably be adding a Twitter feed. We literally just hadn't gotten to that. We were so busy getting this premiere done. But
Right.
Facebook is already up and running, and that would be the best.
Anyway, a very nice screening, very good job to both of you, and hope for distribution and a lot of success down the road.
Great.
And thanks for being with us on the Car Show. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
There's
Yeah,
a
not a
film festival somewhere that would love to show this, I'm
You
sure.
bet. Absolutely.